I never thought I'd reach a breaking point, but when my son told me I was too old-fashioned, something inside me snapped. I had given him everything, my time, my love, my entire life. But in that moment, I realized it wasn't enough. He was gone, and so was I, lost in the role of a mother who had forgotten who she was. I'm curious, where in the world are you joining us from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed for all the latest updates. His words hit me harder than I expected. You're just too old-fashioned, Mom. At first I thought maybe I had misheard him, or he was joking, but when I saw his face, the coldness in his eyes, I realized he meant it. Every word. I stood there, frozen. The world seemed to pause around me. How had we gotten here? My son, my only child, the one I'd devoted my life to, now saw me as irrelevant. Too old-fashioned. A sharp pain pierced through me, a mix of disbelief and sorrow. I wasn't just his mother anymore. I wasn't even someone he could turn to for advice. He didn't need me like he once did. Somewhere along the way, I had become a relic, something of the past, something no longer worthy of his attention. I had always thought that no matter how old he got, I would always be important to him. The one who helped him through his school projects, his heartbreaks, his first job interview, the one who stayed up late when he had nightmares, who cheered him on at every game. But now I was simply old-fashioned. And to him that wasn't a compliment, it was a dismissal. As I looked at him standing there, hands shoved deep into his designer jeans, the confidence that used to be so endearing now felt like a quiet rebellion. The boy who once cried in my arms when he scraped his knee was gone, replaced by someone who seemed so far ahead of me, and I was left behind. Invisible, with nothing to offer but outdated wisdom. I'd spent too long trying to be everything for him, his protector, his guide, his unwavering support. But in doing so, I'd lost sight of myself. I had poured so much into his needs, I had forgotten that I too had a life that wasn't just tied to his expectations. I thought about the years I'd sacrificed, the quiet dreams I tucked away, thinking there would always be time for them. But with every passing year, I gave up a little more. I gave up friendships, opportunities, parts of myself I thought I could wait to explore. I put him first, always. And now here I was, invisible. The sting of his words left a dull ache in my chest. Too old-fashioned. Was that really what I had become? A relic? A burden? What had happened to the woman I once was before I became someone's mother? Before I became someone's caretaker? I needed to understand. I needed to see myself clearly for the first time in years. I tried to remember the last time I did something just for me. The last time I had a voice that wasn't swallowed by his needs, by the demands of others. It had been so long. I had been living in the shadow of who I thought I should be, of who he needed me to be, but who was I anymore? His words echoed in my mind, not just for how they had dismissed me, but for how I had let him dismiss me, for so long. I was invisible, not just to him, but to myself. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the dishes in the sink, my hands clenched around a dish towel. The thought of selling his car, his dream car, felt like a punch to the gut. But why did it feel like the right thing to do? What would it take for me to stop being just a shadow in his life, and start being something more, something of my own? The questions swirled in my mind, and I felt a quiet growing determination. Maybe I had been living for him. Maybe I had shaped my entire world around him, and in doing so, had forgotten what it meant to be me. But I couldn't keep doing that anymore. Without thinking, I reached for my phone. My fingers trembled as I dialed the dealership. And then I did it. I sold his dream car, the one he'd begged for, the one he worked so hard for. Gone. It wasn't about the car. It wasn't about the money. It was about something much bigger than that. It was about reclaiming control, about me. I hadn't expected it to feel so freeing. The weight seemed to lift from my shoulders. It was like I had taken the first step in reclaiming myself, in forging a path forward that was mine. But just as I stood there, savoring the quiet satisfaction of my bold move, My phone buzzed. Text from my son. Why did you sell my car? I stared at the message, my heart pounding in my chest. What had I just done? When he called me old-fashioned, something inside me snapped. I spent the entire night staring at the ceiling, his words playing on a loop in my mind. Too old-fashioned. What did that even mean? Why did it hurt so much? My son, my only child, had become the center of my world for so long, and now it felt like I was nothing more than a burden to him. I had devoted my life to him, and in return I had become invisible. The silence of the night pressed in, amplifying thoughts I had pushed away for years. I realized how much of myself I had given up. Every dream, every ambition, every ounce of energy was spent on him. I had become the perfect mother, but somewhere along the way, I had forgotten what it was to be me. I thought about all the times I put my life on hold, my friendships, my passions, even my own happiness. I had always put him first, believing that was my purpose. But now I felt empty. Who was I when I wasn't someone's mother? What happened to the woman I once was? Guilt gnawed at me. A mother's love is supposed to be unconditional, right? But then the anger crept in. No, I deserved more. I needed to live for myself. I couldn't continue bending to his expectations when I was losing who I was. A quiet decision formed in my mind. It was time to stop living in the shadows of his life. Time to stop being a woman who only existed for someone else. It was time to live for me. My hands clenched into fists as the spark of empowerment began to burn inside me. Fear lingered, but I couldn't ignore it anymore. I needed to change. I needed to take control. I paced around the kitchen, my thoughts racing. The phone sat on the counter, and for a brief moment, I hesitated. Was I really going to do this? Was I ready to let go of everything I had built my life around? The uncertainty was overwhelming, but the idea of freedom began to outweigh the fear. I picked up the phone, my fingers shaking. It wasn't just about selling his car. It was about reclaiming something for myself. Something that didn't belong to him, didn't revolve around his life or his expectations. This was about me. I dialed the dealership. My voice was steady, but my heart pounded. Yes, I'd like to sell a car, I said, taking a deep breath. It's my son's, the one he worked for. The words didn't feel like mine, but I pushed past the doubt. Please, I want to sell it. The transaction was over in minutes. His dream car was gone. I couldn't believe it, but I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I had done it. I had taken the first step toward living for myself again. I had no idea what I was about to do until I walked into the dealership. The cold air inside hit me like a shock, sharpening the doubts already gnawing at me. My hands trembled as I approached the desk, the glossy cars displayed in the showroom like prizes waiting to be claimed. I almost turned around, the weight of my decision pressing down on me, but I didn't. I had come here for a reason, and now that I was face to face with the reality of it, my heart raced. Selling his car, the one he'd worked so hard for, the one he'd begged me for. It had become a symbol of everything I had done for him, of the sacrifices, the time, the effort. That car wasn't just metal and leather. It represented years of me bending over backward, trying to be the perfect mother, the perfect support. It symbolized the woman I had become, the one who had lived for someone else. And here I was, about to let go of it, let go of all of it. I sat across from the dealer, my thoughts racing, a cold sweat forming on my back. I need to sell a car, I said, my voice sounding foreign, distant, even to me. It's my son's car. The dealer nodded, his expression professional, unaffected by the weight of what was happening. What kind of car are we talking about? It felt like a betrayal just to say it. It's a luxury model, I added quietly, my throat dry. He worked hard for it, but I need to sell it. The words stung as they left my mouth. This wasn't just about the car. It was about everything I had given up to make sure he had everything. The countless hours, the sleepless nights, the endless self-sacrifice, the reality of it all, how I had lived only for him, settled over me like a heavy blanket. As the dealer took down the details, I watched the car sitting outside the glass doors. It wasn't just any car, it was his car, a symbol of everything he had wanted, everything he had believed he deserved. I had made it happen for him, but at what cost? The transaction felt mechanical, like I was watching someone else make the decision. It was over in minutes, but it felt like hours. The moment he handed me the check, I couldn't breathe. The weight of what I had just done hit me full force. What had I done? But then something inside me shifted. The money in my hands felt like more than just a simple transaction. It felt like a chance to breathe again, to step out of the life I had built around him, and create something new. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. The freedom to make a choice for myself, to live for myself. I could do something with this money. I could invest in something that was mine. A part of me wanted to run. The guilt still clung to me, whispering that I was doing something wrong, something unforgivable. But I knew deep down that I had to do this. It was the first step toward reclaiming my life, toward getting back to who I used to be, the woman who didn't just exist for someone else. I walked out of the dealership, the cool breeze outside hitting me in the face like a fresh start. But even as I felt liberated, I was also scared. What would happen when my son found out? What would he say when he realized that I had taken that step? Would he hate me? Would he understand? He slammed the door behind him, with such force that it rattled the dishes in the kitchen. I had been expecting this, but now that it was happening, my heart raced. His face was twisted in fury, eyes blazing with anger. What the hell did you do? His voice was tight, strained. You sold my car. I didn't flinch. I had made my decision, and I wasn't going to back down now. Yes, I replied, my voice steady. I did. He stepped toward me, fists clenched at his sides. How could you? That was mine. You had no right to make that choice for me. You've taken everything from me. His words stung, but something inside me refused to crumble. I wasn't the same woman I had been before. I didn't take anything from you, I said, my tone firm. I gave you everything, but I'm done living for you. I'm living for me now. He froze, his face a mix of disbelief and anger. You're really saying that you're just going to throw everything away for your own selfish needs? The guilt flickered inside me, like a small flame, but it was quickly drowned by the strength that was building inside me. For so long, I had put him first, sacrificed everything for him, but no more. I was done. I'm not apologizing for this, I said, my voice unwavering. I made my choice, and I'm not looking back. His anger boiled over. You think you can just do this without consequences? You think you can just... He stopped, his words cutting off abruptly. Then, almost as if he couldn't contain it anymore, he muttered, I was going to sell it anyway. I blinked, the words crashing into me like a shockwave. What? He sighed in frustration, almost as if he was confessing something long buried. I was planning to sell the car myself. I needed the money for something else. You always think I'm so dependent on you, but I had this all figured out. The shock hit me like a punch. For all these years I thought I was helping him, supporting him, but he had been manipulating me the whole time. The realization was like a fog lifting. I had been living under his control, thinking I was doing the right thing, when in reality, he had been using me to get what he wanted. The guilt that had been gnawing at me faded in that moment. I wasn't just a mother. I'd been a pawn in his game. And now, for the first time in years, I was free. The silence between us grew heavy. I knew I had made the right choice, but there was still a part of me that questioned everything. Was I really doing the right thing? Before I could answer, he turned on his heel, his voice cutting through the quiet. I'm done. Don't ever talk to me again. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him, and I stood there, my heart racing. The weight of his words hung in the air like a thick fog. He had just cut me out of his life, like it was nothing. The finality of it hit me hard, but as I stood there, something else crept in, something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. The chains had been broken. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. I had chosen myself. The price of change was high, but it was a price I was willing to pay. And despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. I've spent my whole life waiting for your approval. Not anymore. The words echoed in my mind, as I stepped into the local community center, my heart pounding with a mix of excitement and uncertainty. The air here felt different, charged with possibility. I had spent so long putting everyone else first, especially my son. But now, For the first time in years, I was stepping into something for me. My eyes scanned the bulletin board. Yoga, cooking, painting. The word caught my attention like a spark. It was something I'd always wanted to try, but I'd tucked that dream away. Later I'd told myself, but now, later had arrived. I could finally do something for myself. I picked up a flyer for a watercolor class, my hands trembling as I read the detail. This wasn't just a class. It was a step toward reclaiming my life. I filled out the registration form and handed it over, a sense of purpose growing inside me. For the first time, I wasn't thinking about anyone else. I wasn't living for someone else's approval. As I walked out of the building, the weight of years of silence began to lift. I was doing this for me. But when I got home, the silence was deafening. The anger I knew my son felt hung in the air. He would be furious. He had every right to be. I had taken control of my life for the first time, and that was something he could never understand. My phone buzzed, and my heart sank. It was him. Of course it was. Why are you doing this? His message read, I don't understand what you're trying to prove. You've changed, and it's not for the better. I stared at the text, the sting of his words familiar but not as sharp as before. His anger, his disappointment, they didn't define me anymore. I wasn't going to apologize for choosing myself. I set the phone down, standing in front of the mirror. The woman looking back at me was familiar, but there was something new in her eyes. Strength. For the first time, I wasn't consumed by guilt. I was free. Over the next few weeks, I showed up at the painting class, brush in hand, feeling the weight of years of self-sacrifice begin to lift with every stroke on the canvas. It wasn't just about painting. It was about rediscovering who I was, outside of the roles I had been forced into. I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was someone with her own dreams, her own life. But the fear lingered. Was I doing the right thing? Had I made a mistake? The uncertainty still gnawed at me, but I couldn't ignore the new strength building inside me. I was moving forward, even if I was scared. One evening, as I finished my latest painting, the phone rang. I hesitated, then picked it up. Mom, what's going on with you? His voice was tight, full of frustration. I don't know who you are anymore. You've changed. I closed my eyes, feeling a pang of guilt, but it was different now. I wasn't afraid of his judgment. I'm finding myself, son, I said softly. I'm choosing to live for me, and I'm not apologizing for it. The silence on the other end of the line felt heavy, like he didn't know how to respond. Then, with a mix of hurt and anger, he said, You're making a huge mistake. His voice cracked. I can't even talk to you right now. The line went dead, and I stood there, the weight of his words hanging in the air. But this time, something inside me didn't break. The fear, the guilt, it was all there, but it was overshadowed by the truth. I had made the right choice. His anger still lingered, but I refused to be cowed by it. For the first time, I was living for myself. The price of this change had been steep, but it was a price I was willing to pay. As the silence settled in, I realized that I was finally free. I never expected it to feel like this, like I was finally waking up. For so long, I had been trapped in the motions, living for someone else, always putting my own needs aside. But now, every morning felt different. I woke up with a sense of purpose, the soft light from the window pouring in like a promise of something new. The world outside was still the same, but I was changing, slowly, steadily. The first few days were the hardest. There was a strange emptiness when I came home, a silence that felt both oppressive and freeing. I had lived in that silence for so long, but now that I had taken control of my life, it felt like it might swallow me whole. But as the days passed, I began to find comfort in it. I could hear my thoughts more clearly. I could breathe easier. I walked into the community center more confidently now, ready for my painting class. It was a small group, but the energy there was like nothing I had felt in years. The other women were warm and welcoming, and as we sat together, mixing colors and talking about life, I realized that for the first time in so long, I wasn't just a mother. I was me, and that felt good. I started making small plans for the future. Little things, like thinking about traveling, or taking more classes. Things that were once beyond my reach, because I had been too wrapped up in other people's lives. Now, I was allowing myself to dream again. It wasn't selfish, it was necessary. The more I immersed myself in this new life, the more I began to notice the subtle changes. My posture straightened, my smile felt more genuine. There was an energy in me that I hadn't realized I was missing. And when I met new people, they saw it too. I made friends. Real friends. People who didn't know me just as a mother, but as a woman with her own ideas, her own passions. Their support lifted me up in ways I hadn't expected. But even with all these small victories, there were moments of loneliness. Sometimes, in the quiet of the evening, I'd feel the weight of my son's absence. I wondered what he was doing, if he was thinking about me. His silence was a constant reminder of the price I had paid for my freedom, and yet, there was a peace in it, because I knew I was no longer living for him. I was living for me. I was no longer apologizing for my choices. In those moments of solitude, I started to find comfort in my own company. The loneliness didn't feel as sharp as it had before. Instead of dreading it, I began to embrace it. I had spent so many years trying to fill the silence with someone else's needs. Now, I could simply be, and that was enough. But as I settled into this new rhythm, the excitement of what lay ahead began to overshadow my doubt. The future felt like an open road, and for the first time in a long time, I was walking down it with my head held high. The fear was still there, lurking in the back of my mind, but it no longer controlled me. I had learned to move forward in spite of. Then one afternoon, as I was coming back from my painting class, I saw a familiar figure standing at my doorstep. My heart skipped a beat, and a cold wave of dread washed over me. It was him, my son. He stood there, his hands in his pockets, his face unreadable. I froze for a moment, unsure of what to do. The anger I had felt when he stormed out weeks ago had faded, but the hurt still lingered. And now here he was, standing at my door demanding a face-to-face conversation. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew one thing for certain. This moment was going to change everything. With a deep breath, I opened the door. I opened the door slowly, facing my son. He stood there, hands shoved into his jacket pockets, his expression unreadable but tense. For a moment, neither of us moved. The anger I knew he felt was palpable, but so was the quiet strength building inside me. This moment was inevitable, and I wasn't going to back down. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, his voice strained. I nodded, stepping aside to let him in. He walked past me, his footsteps heavy, the tension hanging in the air. I followed him into the living room, standing across from him, the silence between us thick. "You sold my car," he said sharply, his eyes flashing. "How could you do that? That car meant everything to me." "I sold it because I had to stop living for you," I replied, my voice steady, despite the whirlwind inside. "I've spent too long putting your needs first. I need to live for myself now." He shook his head, disbelief and anger flashing across his face. "You're really saying that, after everything I've done for you, this is what you do?" I took a deep breath, refusing to let his anger rattle me. "I've spent my whole life giving you everything. But now it's my turn. I have to take care of myself." His eyes narrowed, his frustration rising. "You think painting and going to classes is enough? You think that's going to fix everything?" The words hit me, but I held firm. "It's not just about painting. It's about living for me. I can't keep giving everything for you. I've been putting you first for so long, and I'm done." He stepped back, as if struck by what I said. "You've changed, Mom. You're not the woman I grew up with. This isn't you." His words stung, but they didn't break me. The mother he knew was gone, lost to years of sacrifice and silence. And now, I had to choose me. "I know I've changed," I said quietly, "but I haven't stopped loving you. I'm just learning to love myself too." The silence between us grew heavy, but he finally spoke, his voice quieter but still full of frustration. "I'm struggling, Mom. I've been having trouble with money. I need your help." The words hit me hard. My son, the one I had given everything to, was now asking for help. For a moment, the old instinct to protect him rose within me, but I couldn't. Not this time. I can't help you, I said, my voice soft but firm. I've helped you every way I can, but now I need to focus on me. His face contorted with anger and disbelief. What kind of mother are you now? His voice cracked, the pain evident. You've always been there for me, and now you're just walking away? I shook my head, my chest tight. I'm not walking away, but I can't keep sacrificing myself for you. I have to let you stand on your own. He took a step back, eyes filled with hurt. You've lost me forever, he spat, his voice trembling with emotion. I can't believe this. You've changed too much. The words stung more than I wanted to admit, but I stood my ground. I'm sorry, but I can't live for you anymore. I have to live for me. With one last glance, he stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. I stood there, my heart aching with the weight of it all. But beneath the pain, I felt a flicker of peace. I had made my choice, and no matter how much it hurt, I knew it was the right one. The silence in the house felt unbearable, but it was a silence I had to embrace. For the first time in years, and as painful as it was, I knew that growth often came with difficult choices. I had chosen myself, and I wasn't looking back. I didn't just survive this, I thrived. It had been weeks since that brutal conversation with my son, and slowly, I had begun to build a new rhythm, a new life. The early mornings no longer felt heavy with regret or doubt. I woke up eager to start the day, knowing I was doing this for myself. The walls I had built around my own desires, my own dreams, were finally coming down. Today, there was something different in the air. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I didn't reach for it. I didn't need to. The day was mine. I had just finished a painting, one that felt like a breakthrough. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. The strokes on the canvas reflected the strength I was beginning to feel in every part of me. I hadn't just created something beautiful. I had created something from within, something that was all my own. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a sense of pride that had been foreign to me for so long. In that moment, I realized that I had stepped out of my comfort zone, and it had paid off. The painting was a success, not just because it was good, but because it marked the first time in years that I had done something entirely for myself. The satisfaction filled me in a way nothing else ever had. For the first time, I could see the value in what I was doing. I had feared this kind of independence, this kind of growth, but now I welcomed it. I had put my son's needs above my own for so long, and now I was learning how to prioritize myself. The guilt that had once crept in when I chose me over him was finally gone. The absence of his presence, his demands, no longer felt like a void. It felt like freedom. The house was quiet, but the silence didn't feel like an empty space anymore. It was peaceful. I was starting to fill that quiet with the things I had always wanted to do, but had never allowed myself. I was writing more, taking long walks without the weight of obligations tugging at me. I was letting myself be. I had never known how much I needed this time, until now. The world had kept moving, but I had been stuck in place, always putting myself last. Now, I was stepping into the woman I had always wanted to be, strong, confident, and unafraid to chase my dreams. In the evenings, I no longer sat alone in sorrow, wondering what was missing. I found myself enjoying my own company, I started planning things for the future. Little things at first, like taking that trip to the coast, something I'd always talked about, but never did. And I was starting to think bigger. What if I opened a small studio? What if this wasn't just a hobby, but a path to something more? I didn't know the answers, but I knew that the possibilities were endless, and that in itself was a gift I had never given myself before. The phone buzzed again. This time I picked it up without hesitation. It was a message from my son. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please, can we meet? My heart twisted in my chest, but I didn't feel the panic or the rush to fix things like I once would have. Instead, I took a deep breath, sitting down at the table, my fingers gently tapping the edge. His words were an apology, but they weren't enough to undo everything that had happened. He had hurt me, and I couldn't just forget that. I stared at the screen for a long moment. I had learned so much in these past weeks, and one of those lessons was that my choices, my well-being mattered. I wasn't going to give it all up again for him, not unless it was on my terms. I responded with a calmness I had never thought I'd possess. I'll meet you, but on my own terms. We'll talk, but things are different now. As I hit send, the weight of the message hung in the air. I didn't know what the future held with him, but I knew I wasn't going to settle for anything less than what I had found in myself. My phone buzzed again almost immediately, but this time, I didn't open the message. I stood up and walked to the window, watching the world outside. My world. Now, for the first time, I didn't feel afraid of what was to come. I was ready to move forward, but life had other plans. His message had lingered on my phone for days. I need your help. I've been thinking a lot. I've got this business idea, and I think we could work together. Will you meet with me? I promise I'm ready to make things right. I hadn't responded immediately. I had made it clear to myself that I wasn't going to fall back into old patterns, but now with time and reflection, something shifted. The idea of working with him again, of possibly building something together, tempted me. For years I had put his needs before my own, sacrificing my own identity for his. But was this the opportunity I had been waiting for? Was this a chance for a fresh start, where I could have something for me as well? But there was fear. Fear of losing myself again. The guilt that used to creep in when I put myself first still lingered. A shadow I had to fight against. Could I really step back into his world without reverting to the old version of myself, the one who sacrificed her own happiness for his success? I thought about the small victories I'd been savoring, my new routine, my independence, the painting I'd just finished. All of these were symbols of the woman I had become. The silence in my home was no longer oppressive. It was peaceful. I had learned to embrace my own company and the freedom that came with it. Yet, here I was, facing a decision that could turn everything upside down again. I stared at the message again, weighing it carefully. What if his offer was genuine? What if he was finally ready to work together as equals? But what if by stepping into his world again, I was sacrificing the very thing I had fought so hard to achieve, my independence? I stood up, walking to the window, letting the afternoon sun fill the room. I had never imagined myself in this place, feeling strong, capable, ready to chase my dreams. But was I ready to risk it all for a relationship that had hurt me so deeply? The phone buzzed again, and I knew it was time to make a choice. With steady hands, I reached for the phone and typed my response. I'll meet with you, but only on my terms. We'll talk, but things are different now. I hesitated for a moment before sending it. I couldn't predict what would happen next, but I was certain of one thing. I was not going to compromise my growth. The past was still there, but it no longer controlled me. Seconds after sending the message, my phone buzzed with a new reply, but I didn't open it. I set the phone down and took a deep breath, my heart racing. Whatever came next would be on my terms. The past could no longer dictate my future. When I stepped into the cafe, he was sitting by the window, his posture tense, his expression a mix of uncertainty and remorse. I didn't rush toward him. Instead, I took my time, letting the moment stretch between us. The silence of the past few weeks lingered, but now I was in control. Mom, he said as I sat down, his voice low. I'm sorry. I've been selfish. I've hurt you, and I don't expect you to forgive me just like that. But I want you to know how sorry I am. I listened quietly, studying him, wondering if he truly understood the depth of what he had done. I'm listening, I said, my voice steady. He leaned forward, his hands clasped together. I know I've messed up, he continued. I took so much from you, and I never appreciated what you sacrificed. I've been thinking about it a lot, and I finally get it. I don't expect everything to go back to normal, but I want a chance to make things right. I took a deep breath. His words were what I had wanted to hear for so long, but they didn't erase the years of hurt. I hear your apology, I said, choosing my words carefully, but forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean going back to the way things were. He nodded slowly, as if understanding the weight of what I said. I don't want to go back, he said softly. I just want a chance to prove I can do better. I want to fix this. I studied him, searching for any sign of the man I hoped he could become. I'm willing to try, I said, but things are different now. I can't keep sacrificing myself for you. I need to take care of myself, and that means respecting my boundaries. He looked down, clearly hurt, but he didn't argue. I understand, he said quietly. I've always leaned on you and I shouldn't have. I'm sorry for that. The room fell into a heavy silence. I could feel the weight of his apology, but there was still a lingering doubt in my heart. Could I trust him again? Could I work with him without falling back into the old patterns? I need time to trust you again, I said finally. I can't just jump back into the way things were. It'll take time, but I'm willing to try. I get it, he replied, his voice filled with regret. I know I don't deserve your trust, but I'm ready to earn it. I nodded, but the unease in my chest didn't go away. I'm not doing this for you, I said softly. I'm doing it for me. We sat for a while longer, the conversation slowly moving from pain to tentative understanding. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation, but it was a start. I didn't know where this would lead, but I knew one thing for sure. I wouldn't let him back into my life, unless he truly changed. I'll meet you, I said, breaking the silence, but only on my terms. We'll work together, but things are different now. His eyes softened with a mix of gratitude and relief. Thank you, Mom. I won't let you down. As I stood to leave, the weight of the decision settled in. We had agreed to try, but the future was still uncertain. I was ready to move forward, but I wasn't sure what that would look like. Would this truly be the fresh start we both needed, or would it pull me back into the past? The door was open, but I was still guarding my heart. The decision had been made, but the real work was yet to come. I didn't expect trust to be this hard to rebuild, but I was willing to try. The days that followed our conversation were slow, cautious. Each word, each meeting felt like walking on fragile ground. I had set clear boundaries with him. No more old patterns. No more sacrifices made without something in return. The lines between us were drawn, and it was clear this process would take time. Our next meeting was at my place, and for the first time in ages I felt in control. He showed up, coffee in hand, a small but sincere gesture. As we sat across from each other, the silence lingered, filled with everything unsaid, but it didn't feel oppressive. I was no longer the one clinging to the past. I was the one standing firm, ready to move forward. I've been thinking about what you said, he started, his voice soft but steady. I see how much I took from you, and I understand now how wrong that was. I don't expect everything to go back to normal, but I want a chance to make things right. I studied him closely. Careful. I hear you, I said, but forgiveness doesn't mean going back to what we were. It doesn't mean erasing everything that's happened. I need to see change, and that takes time. He nodded slowly, his face showing signs of understanding. I'm not asking for it to go back to how it was. I just want to prove I can do better. I want to fix this for both of us. I looked at him for a long moment. There was sincerity in his words, but I couldn't let my guard down just yet. I'm willing to try, I said, but things are different now. I have to take care of myself, and that means respecting my boundaries. I can't keep putting you first. His eyes dropped to the table, but he didn't argue. I get it. I've always leaned on you and I shouldn't have. I'm sorry for that. The silence between us deepened, but this time, it felt less like a chasm, and more like space for something new to grow. I need time to trust you again, I said, my voice steady. It won't happen overnight. I understand, he replied, his voice sincere. I don't deserve your trust, but I'm ready to earn it. I'm not doing this for you, I said softly. I'm doing it for me. The next few weeks were filled with small steps, phone calls, check-ins, brief meetings. There was no grand reconciliation, no sudden shift, but the space between us felt different. He kept his word, followed through on his commitments, and showed up when he said he would. But even then, I had to keep reminding myself not to fall into old patterns. I couldn't go back to being the one who always fixed everything for him, who dropped everything to make his life easier. The change had to be mutual, and I wasn't about to make it easy for him to slip back into his old way. One evening, after another quiet conversation, he finally said something that caught me off guard. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot about the future, and I think we should start a business together. I've got some ideas, and I think we could really make something of it." The words hung in the air. A business? I wasn't sure I was ready for this. Working with him again, crossing that line between parent and partner. What did this mean for? Was it a genuine opportunity, or was he just trying to pull me back into his world, into that place where I had always been the one to give? I looked at him, carefully weighing the offer. "I'll think about it," I said slowly. "But this has to be different. I'm not going back to the old way. We do this, but it's on my terms. Respect and trust come first." He nodded, a look of gratitude and relief crossing his face. "Thank you, Mom. I won't let you down." The conversation was over, but I could feel the weight of the decision still hanging in the air. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I wasn't going to let him back in, unless he proved he had truly changed. I stood up to leave, my mind racing with possibilities and fears. This was a new beginning, but it was still uncertain. Would we build something together, or would it all fall apart again? The future was open, but I was guarding my heart, knowing that the road ahead would require more patience, more trust, and more strength than I had ever imagined. I had always put him first, but now I was learning how to put myself first too. The changes were gradual but undeniable. The mornings, once heavy with guilt and obligation, now held a quiet promise. I woke up eager to begin my day, no longer burdened by the weight of others' needs. My focus had shifted from fixing his problems to fixing my own life. The transformation was subtle but powerful. I stood in front of the mirror one morning, taking in the woman looking back at me. There was a softness to her smile, a lightness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. I was proud of how far I had come. It hadn't been easy, but I had rebuilt myself from the inside out, one decision at a time. The relationship with my son had shifted as well. We were no longer stuck in the old pattern. I had set boundaries, and for the first time, they weren't just words, I was living them. I no longer rushed to fix everything for him, or rearranged my life around his needs. The lines between us were clearer now, and though the space between us remained, it felt like a healthier distance. We were no longer dependent on one another in the same way. There were moments when the old habits crept in, the urge to make things easier for him, to take on his burdens, but I held firm. I reminded myself that this was about my growth, not just about making things right for him. And I saw progress. He respected the boundaries I set, even when it wasn't easy. The changes weren't immediate, but each step we took felt like a small victory. I began to pursue my own goals, not just for him, but for me. I had started taking painting classes, something I had always wanted to do but had never allowed myself. Writing again became part of my routine. I started planning trips, making long-term goals for myself, and the thought of opening a studio didn't feel like a distant dream anymore. It felt possible. I was discovering parts of me I had buried for years, and each new passion I explored reminded me of the strength I had always had inside me. The house, once filled with silence that felt heavy, was now a place of peace. I had learned to embrace the quiet, to sit with myself without the need to fill every moment. The loneliness that used to creep in no longer defined me. It had become a space for reflection, growth and joy. One evening I sat on the porch, letting the cool air wash over me as the sun set. My phone buzzed, interrupting the calm. I glanced at it. It was a message from my son. "I know you're busy, but I just wanted to say, I really respect what you're doing. You're stronger than I ever realized and I'm proud of you." His words caught me off guard. I had expected him to ask for something, but instead he was acknowledging me. It was the kind of recognition I hadn't expected, but desperately needed. For so long I had put his needs above my own, but now for the first time, he saw me, not just as his mother, but as the woman I was becoming. I put the phone down, letting the words sink in. I had come so far, and this moment felt like validation. The door to the future had opened, and while the road ahead was still uncertain, I knew one thing for sure: I was finally walking down it as myself. There was no going back to the old ways. Whatever the future held, whether it was a new business with him, or something entirely different, I was ready. For the first time in years, I felt like I was living for me, and that was all I needed to move forward. The future felt wide open, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next. This was the moment I had been waiting for, but it was more than I ever imagined. The transformation I had worked so hard for was finally here. The mornings once clouded with guilt were now filled with quiet anticipation. I no longer woke up feeling burdened by the needs of others. I had shifted my focus from fixing his problems to fixing my own life, and the change was profound. I had learned how to put myself first, to prioritize my own goals and desires, and it felt like freedom. Standing in front of the mirror, I saw a woman I didn't fully recognize at first. A woman with softer eyes, a smile that reached her heart, and a quiet strength that had been buried for too long. I was proud of how far I had come. It hadn't been easy, but I had rebuilt myself piece by piece, and now I was beginning to live the life I had longed for. The relationship with my son had changed too. We had established healthier boundaries. No longer was I the one rushing to fix everything for him or rearranging my life around his needs. We were finally giving each other space to grow, to be separate yet still connected. It wasn't easy, but we were learning how to navigate this new dynamic, one that was based on respect rather than dependency. There were still moments when I was tempted to fall back into old habits, when I wanted to rush in and take care of him, but I resisted, reminding myself that my journey was about my own growth, not just making things right for him, and I saw progress. He respected the boundaries I had set, even when it wasn't easy for either of us. In those quieter moments, I found joy in pursuing my own goals. I started taking painting classes, something I had always wanted to do but never allowed myself. Writing became part of my routine again, and I began planning future trips, setting long-term goals for myself. The thought of opening a studio, a dream I'd shelved years ago, didn't feel so distant anymore. It felt possible. I was discovering parts of myself I had forgotten, and each new step forward reminded me of the strength I had always possessed. The house once filled with a heavy silence was now peaceful. I had learned to embrace the quiet, to be at ease with my own company. The loneliness that used to overwhelm me no longer held power over me. I had reclaimed that space and filled it with growth, joy, and self-reflection. One evening, as I sat on the porch, enjoying the cool breeze and the fading sunset, my phone buzzed. I picked it up, expecting another business call, but it was from him. A message that stopped me cold. "I know you're busy, but I just wanted to say, I really respect what you're doing. You're stronger than I ever realized, and I'm proud of you." His words caught me off guard. I had expected him to ask for something, to want more from me, but instead he was simply acknowledging my growth. For so long I had put his needs first, but now he saw me not just as his mother, but as the woman I had become. I set the phone down, letting his words settle in. I had worked so hard to get here, and this recognition, however simple, felt like the validation I needed. The door to my future was wide open, and though the path ahead was uncertain, I knew one thing for sure: I was finally walking it as myself. Just as I was reflecting on the journey I had made, another message came through from my son. "Mom, I've been thinking about your goals, and I really want to be a part of them. I have some ideas for a business venture. I'd love to partner with you, invest in your dream." The words hung in the air, both exciting and unnerving. A partnership? Could we really work together? Could we collaborate without falling back into old patterns, without me slipping back into the role of fixer? I took a deep breath and set the phone down again, letting the weight of the decision settle over me. I wasn't sure, but I knew one thing: I wasn't going to lose myself again. If we moved forward, it had to be on my terms with respect, trust, and equality. I typed my response slowly, carefully, knowing this could change everything. I'll think about it, I wrote. But if we do this, it's on my terms. No going back to old patterns. I'm doing this for me too. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time I felt ready to take that leap, knowing that no matter what, I would protect the woman I had become. I never thought peace would feel this earned. It had been a slow, quiet transformation, one I barely noticed as it happened, but now that I was standing in the middle of it, I could finally breathe. The weight I had carried for so long, the burden of always trying to fix things for others, had lifted. The emotional struggles that had once defined my life, those heavy years of guilt, of constant self-sacrifice, had been replaced with a strength that felt like it was woven into my very being. The mornings felt different now, filled with a serenity that hadn't been there before. I woke up and didn't feel the need to rush, to fill the silence with worry or to chase after obligations. I simply was. My life was mine now, and there was a quiet joy in just existing, in moving through my days on my terms. I could hear myself think, feel the calm in my heart, and for the first time, the stillness wasn't something to fear, it was something to embrace. My relationship with my son had evolved too. It was healthier, more grounded. There was respect between us, a mutual understanding that we were no longer dependent on one another in the ways we once were. He no longer expected me to fix everything, and I no longer tried. There were no more endless sacrifices on my part, no more bending over backward to make his life easier. We had found a new kind of balance, one that allowed both of us to grow individually while still maintaining a connection, a bond that wasn't rooted in need but in genuine care. The old patterns had faded, and I had let them go. The caretaker, the one who always put others first, was no longer my role. I was a woman living for herself, embracing her own needs, her own desires. The thought of putting myself first used to feel selfish, but now it felt natural. I realized that true peace didn't come from taking care of everyone else. It came from embracing my own life and the choices that were mine to make. The past few months had been a journey, one that had tested me in ways I hadn't expected, but the journey had led me here, to a place of contentment I hadn't known was possible. I had fought for this peace, earned it with every boundary I set, with every decision I made for myself instead of for someone else. I had built my life on my own terms, and for the first time, it felt right. It wasn't just about surviving anymore, it was about living. I thought back to where I had been, to the woman who felt invisible, who thought her only worth was in what she could do for others. I didn't recognize her now. The woman I saw in the mirror was strong, confident, at peace. She had learned that her value wasn't in her sacrifices, but in her ability to live her truth. My son's recent offer, his proposal to invest in my dream, still lingered in my mind. It wasn't that I hadn't considered it, but I needed to be sure. I couldn't let him back into my life, unless he respected the boundaries I had fought so hard to establish. But something inside me knew that this moment, this opportunity could be a turning point for both of us. I wasn't going to lose myself again, but I wasn't going to close the door entirely either. If we did this, it had to be different. This time I was in control. As I sat in the quiet of the morning, sipping my coffee and looking out at the world beyond my window, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. I had earned this peace, I had fought for it, and though the future remained uncertain, I knew one thing for sure: I was ready for whatever came next. The road ahead was still open, filled with possibilities. The future was mine to shape, mine to define, and I was walking it with confidence. I stood up, ready to take on the next step of this journey, knowing that no matter what, I had the strength to face. The past no longer had a hold on me, and the future was wide open. I was finally free, and I was ready. I wasn't just living. I was finally thriving. It was the first time in my life I could truly say that the life I had built was mine, not borrowed from others, not dictated by anyone else's needs or expectations. I woke up every morning with a sense of purpose, but more than that, with a sense of freedom. My days were no longer filled with the weight of sacrifice. They were filled with choices, choices that were all my own. I stood in front of my easel one morning, the brush in my hand, looking at the canvas before me. The colors had started to flow more naturally now, each stroke a reflection of the confidence I had discovered within myself. My life, like this painting, was becoming a work of art, one that I could proudly say was entirely my own creation. I was in control, and it felt good, better than I could have ever imagined. The professional side of my life had blossomed too. The business idea I had put on the back burner for so long was now moving forward. I had made the decision to take the leap, to really go after what I wanted. My son's offer to invest in my dreams was still a thread hanging in the air, but I had no intention of letting it define me. I was shaping my future, not just waiting for it to happen. I was no longer the passive caretaker, the woman who was always behind the scenes. I was standing front and center, building something real, something that was mine. My relationship with my son had evolved too. We had found balance, and for the first time, we were learning how to be family, without the constant push and pull of dependence. There was respect between us now, a quiet understanding that we both had separate paths to walk, but that didn't make our connection any less meaningful. He was no longer my responsibility, but I wasn't his either. We were equals in our own right, and that allowed us to be better to one another. There were no more compromises, no more bending to someone else's will. I was no longer apologizing for the choices I made, and I was no longer questioning whether I was doing the right thing. The joy that came from living on my terms, from making decisions based on what I wanted rather than what others expected of me, was beyond what I could have imagined when I started this journey. The quiet satisfaction of that peace settled in my heart every day. But I didn't take it for granted. I had earned this place. I had fought for every inch of freedom I now had. And even though the future was still uncertain, I could feel it, pulsing with possibility, waiting for me to take the next step. I looked out the window, the world stretching out before me, a blank canvas, ready to be filled with whatever I chose. This wasn't just about living anymore. It was about thriving, about reaching for the things that had always been just out of reach, the things I had told myself were impossible. Now I was doing the impossible. I was living the life I had dreamed of. I was making my own choices and building my own future. And then as I was lost in thought, my phone buzzed. Another message from my son. I've been thinking about everything you've said. I respect your decision, and I've realized that I need to step back, let you do this on your own terms. You've come so far, and I can see how strong you are. Whatever happens, I'm proud of you. His words hit me like a wave, soft but powerful. I hadn't expected this kind of acknowledgement, but it meant more than I could have imagined. He wasn't just respecting my boundaries, he was acknowledging my growth, the woman I had become. I put the phone down, my chest tight with emotion. In that moment, I realized how far I had come, not just in rebuilding my life, but in finding a peace I never thought I would have. The journey had been long, but it had led me to this place of true contentment. With a full heart, I stood up from the chair and walked to the window. The future was waiting, wide open, and I was ready to step forward into the next chapter, ready to embrace whatever came next. I had found my peace, and now I was going to make the most of it. The world was mine to shape, and I was ready to shape it.